Now, I don't know if you'll agree with this. I think it's a possibility of being true again, though. The last two teams to sweep the West went on to win the NBA championship. Like we said, the Spurs and the Lakers were the last two to do it. The Spurs, to me, look like the most consistent team, at least over the last stretch of 4 or 5 games. I mean, including before the Memphis series started. They execute. They're like I said, they are literally just a well-oiled machine, and they know what they want to do. They know how to go about doing it, and then if somebody stops them from doing what they originally want to do, they have their plan B, their plan C, their plan D, so on and so forth. I really do think that the Spurs look really well. If Tony Parker's going to play like this, I don't know if anybody can beat them. Funny thing to me, though, is after Tony Parker's performance, everything I saw on TV and radio or heard on radio yesterday, everybody's saying it. Does yesterday's game, or well, what would be now Monday's night's game, does that make Tony Parker one of the best players in the entire NBA? Is he a top 5 player? Is he the best point guard in the league? And I'm like sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, look, I think Tony Parker is a very, 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 very good point guard. Do I consider him the best point guard in the league? Like if you said to me, you can build a franchise, pick one point guard to start with, Tony Parker would not be the name I picked.
He was an MVP candidate.
He was.
Up until February.
Yeah, well, then he got injured. He got screwed out by the injury. It's not even like he got screwed because he started playing bad. I mean, but I don't look at him. Like, I do consider, look, if you said you have to have Tony Parker, I'm not going to cry about it.
But I'm saying, right now, I'd probably want Tony Parker over Darren Williams. I'd probably want Tony Parker over a few different guys. Maybe not Chris Paul. Maybe not Rondo. But I'd probably take him over Westbrook right now. He's a better passer than Westbrook is. Can score, put up 20 or 30 points for you a game like Westbrook can. It's all on preference and style and how you want to run your game. And for what San Antonio does, he does exactly what they need him to do. He distributes, and he also scores. He's that second scorer, really their first scorer, and then you have Duncan and Ginobili behind him.
Yeah.
But he's probably their best all-around player on the team. And that's hard to say when you have a first ballot Hall of Famer and probably one of the greatest players ever. Yeah. Got to be in the conversation.
And according to most people, argue probably the greatest power forward to ever play the game of basketball.
So you look at it, and, maybe that downplays part of what Parker does because you're so used to just seeing him around stars and him just being a part of that threesome that you're just like, oh, well, he's Tony Parker.
He's another one of the guys.
But, we always talk about here on the show, people at the table, people knocking on the door, people, waiting to get into the room and that special room of players. And I'll tell you what, Tony Parker may not be at the head of that table.
He's at it.
But he's at it. He's solidly at it. He's got to be in the conversation of, like I said, he got to be with Rondo and Paul and, like I said, Williams and Westbrook. He's got to be in that discussion by far. Damian Lillard, isn't he a point guard as well?
Yeah.
Kyrie Irving is a young point guard, but I think both of them are knocking on the door.
Yeah, I wouldn't
is it all right if
anymore,
can I see what's going on in here?
Yeah. Can I watch what you guys do? I know what you're saying, and I do agree with you. Based on the analogy me and you like to make, I would put him at the table. There's no question about it. And I consider Tony Parker one of the better players in the NBA. Do I consider him the best point guard? No. But if you told me you have to have him on your team, I would be more than happy about taking Tony Parker on my team.
See, I think he is one of the best point guards in the league, though. And I'll tell you what. Chris Paul may be flashier. A lot of players may be flashier, and I don't think people give Tony Parker the respect he deserves because he plays in a small market. He plays in San Antonio. He doesn't have a ton of media attention on him. Like I said, he plays with Tim, Duncan, and Ginobili. Where Chris Paul he's in L.A. You know what I mean? He's there. He's front and center. He's in the second biggest media hub in the nation.
And he's constantly talked about being on different teams and where he should be. And His name gets in the media way more than more than Tony Parker.
And I think that's why people may sit here and they'll go, "Oh, well, I'd rather Chris Paul." But is Chris Paul still playing right now? Don't think so.
Actually, Chris Paul's team got knocked out by the team that they.
Is Chris Paul able to go? Hey guys, I got a couple of these.
No. But on the flip side, you can say he's never played with a guy like Tim Duncan or had a coach like Popovich. I agree with what you're saying, but just to play like that devil advocate type of side of it, he's never played for a coach like Popovich. Ever. He's never played with somebody as good as Tim Duncan. Ever.
Yeah, but could he play for a guy like Popovich, though? Or is he too, I want to go out there and do my own thing? See, that's the one thing about all three, Parker, Ginobili, and really anybody who plays for the Spurs, there is, Popovich has total control of that team. Absolute 100% control. Where Chris Paul, I almost feel like, could do whatever he wants on the court, and the coach just asks him, hey, would you want to do this? Hey, can we do that? And Chris Paul is more of the leader on the floor, where you can clearly tell Popovich will bench everybody and not think twice about it. Would Chris Paul be a guy that's just going to go sit on the bench and not argue with his coach?
That's actually a really, really good point. Like, really good point. Because no matter how great a player is, ego is something that can always get in the way of actually achieving greatness. You know what I mean? Like, you can be the greatest player in the world. Allen Iverson, to me, is a perfect example. He was one of the greatest players in the league at his time. When he was in his prime, nobody in the league could guard him one-on-one when he was in his prime. But you have the famous practice, moment of his career. You have the fact that even in his early 30s, just going back a few years ago, NBA teams didn't want him anymore because of his mentality and his attitude. And that's a really good example, just a really good point to make of the fact that it's more than just how good you are on the court. You need to be able to put your ego aside for the benefit of the team as a whole. And that is what separates great players that make great achievements and great players that just get their names in stat books. That's great for you. You put all those stats in the world, and that's not true for everybody. I'm sure that Karl Malone and John Stockton were great guys, and they got along with Jerry Sloan in Utah, and they just weren't able to get over the hump. I don't want to knock every great player that didn't win a championship, but I do think that's a very good way to put it. Would you be able to put your ego aside to listen to a great coach like somebody like Greg Popovich? And I really do think that's actually a great way to put it. Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, first trio on a team other than the Celtics or Lakers to reach the finals 4 times together. I thought that was a pretty cool stat. So I wanted to throw that out there real quick. I mean, you have guys that have done, like Jordan and Pippen. They were all 6 together. But there was not one guy that was part of the first 3 that was part of the second 3 other than Jordan and Pippen and, of course, Mr. Phil Jackson. But that's a coach, not a player. So Spurs sweep the Grizzlies. They've got at least – finals don't start till June 6th, which is a week from tomorrow.
9 days off. This is actually the most days off a team has had between the end of the conference finals and start of the actual finals since the Spurs had 10 games off, and I think it might have been back in – I'm not sure what year it was. I'll be honest. It might have been 2007 that they had 10 games off.
That's a long it's a long time off, but for a team like this, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think
it's a really good thing for the Spurs because it gives Parker a chance to heal up even more with that calf, gives Duncan time to rest his legs, gives Ginobili a little time off. He had a little bit of a rough shooting patch the last few games.
Yeah.
And Popovich is going to have 10 days to pretty much game plan, 9 days to game plan for probably the Heat. But now if you look at it, you're probably going to game plan for the Heat and hope you get the Pacers.
Yeah, I do agree with what we heard on the ride down here. I think San Antonio matches up well with either one of the teams. I really do.